So we ready? So good morning, everyone. My name is Richard Carranza. I serve as Superintendent of Schools at the Houston Independent School District, and I'm joined here this morning by Trustee Ann Sung, one of our members of the Board of Education. We expect that some more of our board members may join us in just a moment. We'll bring them up as well. But I'm also joined here by many of our colleagues, my colleagues in the district, many of our principals, and you'll understand why I've asked the principals to join us, these particular principals to join us here this morning. So this morning, the Texas Education Agency, TEA, released the accountability ratings for campuses for the 2016-2017 school year. I'm very, very proud to report that HISD continues to make significant academic progress district-wide. In fact, with today's release of ratings, 90% of our campuses in the HISD have met or exceeded the state's standards. That is the highest percentage of HISD schools in the last 5 years, actually since the accountability system was effective in 2013. Again, 90% of our schools district-wide have met or exceeded the campuses in the academic standards. In particular, 259 campuses were also eligible for distinction designations this year. And in order to be eligible for a distinction, you must be in the top quartile of like schools across the state of Texas. So again, 259 of our campuses were eligible this year for distinction designations. 160 of our campuses received at least one distinction designation, placing them again, as I mentioned, in the top quartile of similar campuses across the state of Texas. 33 of our campuses received every eligible distinction for their academic level, 33 of our campuses. So that's a very good indicator of the academic strength of the HISD schools. In addition to our campuses, the district overall received a rating of Met Standard. And again, this is for this past school year, 2016-2017. And this is another very good indicator of academic achievement for our district. We all know that we have some of the top schools in the country, and we're very proud of our schools. This year, 278 of our school campuses received an academic rating by the Texas Education Agency. Of those 278 campuses, 27 campuses received a rating of improvement required. Improvement required, sometimes referred to as IR, indicates that the campus has not met the academic standard to meet standards. And there are 4 indices that are used to calculate that rating. We have 27 of our 278 campuses that did not meet the standard. That compares to last year, we had 38 schools that received an improvement required rating from the state. So we've reduced the number of campuses that have earned that distinction of improvement required. Again, that's a good thing. It's a very positive trend. We also know with the recent news from TEA and the implementation of HB 1842 that there are a number of school campuses that this year must improve significantly enough to avoid the penalties associated with HB 1842. The penalties associated with HB 1842 are the commissioner shall implement either a closure of the campus or the imposition of a board of managers. I'm going to pause here to also recognize one of our trustees, Holly Maria Flynn Villaseca. Thank you, Trustee Flynn Villaseca, for being here today. So this is important for us because 10 of our 27 IR schools this year fall into that cohort of schools that must improve significantly enough to exit improvement required status, or they face the sanctions under HB 1842. I want to reiterate to our community that the Board of Education and this administration is laser focused on providing the supports, the resources, the capacity building through an equity lens to ensure that those 10 campuses will not have to face the sanctions under HB 1842. We are very proud of the schools and what they have done. And the reason I'm joined with by the principals that you see behind me is because this year we were able to have 21 of our schools that exited IR status, that were IR last year, improvement required, and this year have met standards. And they are the principals of the schools that have led their campuses to that designation. So what I'd like to do is invite one or two to the mic. First, I'm going to ask our trustees if they would like to share a word or two. And then I'm going to invite one or two of our principals to just share some of the things that they did this year, this past year, that they did to enable their campuses to move out of improvement required status and into met standards status. So at this point, I'd like to invite Trustee Sung and Trustee Vilaseca to say a few words around the release of these academic standard scores today.
Good morning. I'd like to say that I, as a trustee on this board, am very encouraged by these results, but also very sensible of the work that lies ahead of us. We have an experienced team here who knows how to get results for students, from the principals you see here to our superintendent. I myself was a teacher and part of the leadership team at a school in 2009 to 2011, Lee High School, that was in IR for over 5 years and came out of IR. I understand how hard this work is, but also that it's possible. If we raise academic standards for our students, get really focused on delivering the best quality instruction to them, and also put the wraparound supports around our schools and families that they need to be able to come to school ready to learn each day. When those ingredients are in place, we can work miracles. And I want to let you know that this board and our superintendent have not been waiting to put these pieces into place. We've been working hard over the last year to implement these strategies and the Achieve 180 framework we're going to be working on very hard this year.
And I just want to reiterate and emphasize everything and I'm very proud here to be standing alongside principals that have been doing the work on a laser focus, and that we are providing the wraparound supports for our schools, because it truly is a partnership between everything that we're doing here at HISD with the community, with strong leadership. And I'm really encouraged that we're going to be learning from these other schools so that we can implement some of these different practices in our schools that have been identified on the IR list. And again, I do commit to also working in partnership with the fellow trustees and the Board of Education to make sure that we are laser focused from a governance standpoint on the things that matter, so that we can, again, to be able to monitor and to also encourage and believe in our schools and in our students.
Thank you, trustees. The designation of an improvement required status is not a moniker that defines a school community. There are incredible talent, there are incredible gifts that exist in our school communities, and often it's the leader that will come together with their staff to be able to lead that community in finding those gifts, finding those talents, and leading to higher academic achievement. So I'd like for you to hear from a couple of our principals, and I'd like to invite Mr. Bush to come forward from Cashmere Gardens Elementary School, and then we're going to ask Ms. Monahan from one of our secondary schools to talk to you a little bit about what they've done over the past year to help lead their schools out of that IR designation and lead them into not only meeting standards but eventually exceeding standards. I will say one other thing before they come up is that again, it's important to understand that there are incredible things happening at these campuses, and that the designations in terms of the bar that has been set for schools to meet standards or exceed standards has risen over the last 5 years since the implementation of this accountability system. So they've been now meeting a rising bar, which is something to be very proud of as well. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, their name, and what school they're from, and then talk a little bit about what they did over the course of this past year to help lead them out of IR status.
Good morning. Thank you, Superintendent Carranzas. First, I'd like to thank the entire school district and the community for the phenomenal support that you have lended in making sure that our kids get the very best at Cashmere Gardens Elementary School. And on behalf of my colleagues and myself, we all like to say thank you to everyone for the phenomenal support that was given from the superintendent and the central office here in Houston Independent School District. Basically, every day we worked on those 3 fundamental principles. Everyone that's standing here has 3 fundamental principles. And number 1, it starts with believing in children. And number 2, that's eliminating every excuse. And last but not least, staying laser focused, as you've heard it a couple of times. This year, more principals took it serious to go out to other campuses who may have had a similar or like campus, making sure we looked at all the sub-pops of every student that was entering our building. And last but not least, making sure that the parents and the community was empowered, which is an initiative that I hear the superintendent talk about so often. We have to make very sure every single day it's a vetting process of who we bring to work with our children each and every day. So what we do every day is take it very serious, making sure that planning is the focus. We have to plan properly and accordingly for each and every child. And last but not least, making sure that we eliminate every excuse and believe in the child.
Thank you very much. Now, this is particularly important because Cashmere Gardens was an improvement required status for a number of years. And one of the statistics we're also very proud of this year is that we were, as a district, through the hard work of our principals and teachers and school staffs, we were able to move a bigger cohort of schools that were in multiple years of IR status out of IR this year. And that's a significant feat we're very proud of. So I'd like to ask Ms. Monahan to come forward. Again, introduce yourself, what school you're from, and talk a little bit about the school, what that work looked like at a high school level.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here this morning. When we talk about family, and we talk about family of Westbury High School, as the principal of Westbury High School, that branches way beyond just Westbury High School. It branches on to my colleagues who we work closely with. It branches on to the family here at the district office, our superintendent, who's a huge supporter of rallying behind us and helping us with everything that we need help with. I couldn't be more proud of our school to come off the IR list. It took first developing relationships with our students and making sure that they understand how important they are to us. As a principal of Westbury High School going into my 3rd year, the first thing we did was start to build culture within that school and let the students know that we believed in them. And I think that's where it started for us 2 years ago. Each year it has developed more and more. The teachers are staying. We're keeping our staff. That has been a key in improving instruction on the campus. The other part is looking at data every single day. Right now, we're in our 2 weeks of professional development. We're already starting to look at the students that are coming to Westbury and making sure that we are ready for them on day 1. But the first thing we're going to do is make sure that they know we're there for them and that we'll do whatever it takes to help them succeed. That's what our goal is. Our students come with a lot of needs. We talk about the wraparound services that ISD supports us with. That's key. And being a part of Achieve 180 is actually going to be a huge support for us this year already. We've looked at the pillars as a staff already. We're developing those areas that we know we need to strengthen, and we're going to be ready for those students on day 1. So we're excited, we're on the right track, and we're ready to just move forward in a positive way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if I was to ask each one of my colleagues to come up and share, you'd hear very similar and some powerful stories as well. So I hope you don't mind. We have 2 representatives that represented you so well this morning. I mentioned this morning about 10 schools that will be subject to the sanctions under House Bill 1842. But it's important to also recognize 3 schools that were on that list to be eligible for sanctions and have already taken themselves off the list. And that is Cashmere Gardens Elementary School, congratulations, and also Victory Prep North and Victory Prep South, whose principal is here as well. So we want to congratulate them for coming off that list as well. So with that, my colleagues and I will be here, and we're happy to answer whatever questions you may have.
Superintendent, for perpetually, troubled schools, I know in a lot of these communities, the parents, there's almost a stigma, in overcoming some of these challenges are difficult. What is your message to those families who are in these districts where these schools happen to be located?
Yeah, so my message is that there's no such thing as a bad school. What there is a lack of district support for addressing the challenges that school and school communities have. So it's important for parents to understand that when they visit a school, they should look beyond the designation. They should actually talk to the principal. They should talk to teachers. They should walk the hallways. They should look at what is the community involvement with that particular school. And I think that part of the stigma that gets perpetuated, and we want to be part of breaking that stigma, is this notion that it's a bad school, you should go somewhere else. I'll give you a perfect example. Kashmir Gardens was a school that suffered from that stigma, yet when parents and students came to the school and became part of that new energy in the school, you can see that the academic achievement is starting to blossom and move forward. And Kashmir Gardens may have met standards, but they're going to exceed standards this year because they have this momentum that's going for them. So the message really is there aren't bad schools. It's how we as a community rally to support our schools that is very, very important. Laura.
Can you talk about the schools that moved onto the, I understand there were 4 HISD schools that moved onto the improvement required list, and I was wondering if you could talk about those.
Sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually invite our director of Research and Accountability, Ms. Carla Stevens, to give us some more information. But I will talk about it in this way. HB 1842 requires that by August 15th of 2018, 1 year from today, any school that is in improvement required status 5 or above either is closed or that district suffers by replacing the elected board with a board of managers. So for us, there are 7 schools that are already already IR5 or above, but there are 3 schools that are IR4 this year. So we're looking at them as a cohort of 10 schools, because if none of those schools move off of IR, it will trigger the penalties under HB 1842. But to talk specifically about some of those, the demographics and who those schools are, I'm going to ask Ms. Stevens if she could join us at the podium.
Thank you, Superintendent Carranza. As he mentioned, we do have 27 campuses that are improvement required this year. We have 8 of them that are year 1. And those campuses that are year 1 would be Addix Middle School, Fondren Elementary School, Lucin Elementary School, Pugh Elementary School, Sharpstown High School, Montgomery Elementary School, Stevens Elementary School, and Victory Prep K-8. So those are all in first year improvement required. We also have 4 that are in year 2. We have 5 campuses that are in year 3. We have 3 campuses that are in year 4 that Superintendent Carranza has mentioned. We have 3 campuses that are in year 5. We have 3 campuses that are in year 6 and 1 campus that is in year 8. So these are the 27 improvement required campuses.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. I would also add that in a number of these, and we'll be available after the conference for some more detailed conversations, but in many of these campuses that are in IR or improvement required status, they missed making the academic mark by, in some cases, points, just literally 1 number. So some of them are very, very close. Again, that doesn't negate the kind of support, the kind of focus that we're going to have in addressing and helping to support the academic achievement at those campuses. But I think it's important that folks realize that when you draw a line, there are some people that are going to be 1 point away from that line, but the label still gets added to you as improvement required. So we feel very confident that we have a system in place that is going to be able to address these concerns, and as you heard from our principals today, bring resources to bear to allow them to lead and allow teachers to teach their way out of that kind of a designation. Yes, ma'am. Esas 10 escuelas son el enfoque del distrito, no tan solo con el apoyo que les vamos a otorgar, sino que también con los recursos financieros necesarios para tener un impacto en esos planteles. También estamos trabajando muy directamente con los directores de esas escuelas. Tenemos un plan para el desarrollo profesional de los maestros en esas escuelas también, como también los artículos necesarios para que tengan lo necesario para poder enseñarles a los estudiantes a un grado aún alto. También es importantísimo porque en muchas de estas escuelas tenemos padres que no hablan inglés, entonces estamos también comenzando un programa bien agresivo en traer a esos padres de familia a la escuela e informarles cuáles son sus derechos, pero también informarles qué es lo que sus niños deberían saber y poder demostrar cuando salgan de cada grado. Entonces es informar y empoderar a la comunidad, como también informar, empoderar y apoyar los líderes y los maestros en esos planteles también.
¿Pero podría tomar control la Agencia de Educación de Texas de estos 10 planteles?
Si ellos no salen de esa designación IR, Improvement Required, entonces es la ley que en un año de hoy, el 15 de agosto 2018, si no han salido, si no han mejorado bastante para salir de esa designación, el Estado los puede cerrar.
Pero en general los números de HISD están muy bien el año pasado.
Pues los números en general ha mejorado muchísimo este distrito, especialmente ese año pasado. El 90% de nuestras escuelas están haciendo muy bien según cómo nos están otorgando la calificación el estado de Texas. Entonces es algo no olvidar que el 90% de todas las escuelas ya están trabajando muy, muy bien. Estos 27 escuelas que tienen esa designación de IR no son malas escuelas, sino que nosotros estamos enfocándonos como un distrito unido para poder ayudar, apoyar y mejorar esas escuelas. Yes, ma'am. So the Board of Education has been very clear that we are not interested in, and I'm not interested in closing school communities or schools. When you close a school in a community, it starts the deterioration of that community. The school really is the center of a community. I think what the board has taken a view on, and I'm very supportive of this, is a much more enlightened view of how you improve school communities. And it's a systemic issue. So the issues of enrollment have to do with some pretty big topics that you don't fix in a year, but we've already started looking at how do we place our magnet programs? Where do we place our magnet programs? We started looking at how do we fund our schools, and do we really have an equity weight for the funding of our schools, and how do we utilize those resources? And you know, in some cases, we've made decisions in the past, no harm, no foul, but it's hurt these school campuses. So we're looking at that, and the board is committed to look at that. But I can't miss the opportunity of also saying that when you have an urban environment that is Houston ISD, and all of the trials and tribulations that come with living in an urban environment, the fourth largest city in America, and you have issues of homelessness and intergenerational poverty, and you have food deserts in some of these communities, and you have violence and safe pathways that kids have to traverse to get to school. It's not just an HISD issue. So because of that, we're working very closely with Mayor Turner and his Connected Communities initiative so that we bring these wraparound services and we leverage what the city of Houston is doing around these very school communities to provide those safe passages, those connections to resources that students may need if they're homeless or if there's some kind of a mental health issue, so that we're preparing students as best we can as a community for them to be ready to learn in the schools. The other thing I would say about this issue as well is that it doesn't just stop in Houston, it also stops in Austin. So this year we will write a $162 million check back to the state of Texas, where we could use that $162 million to provide those wraparound services. We could use those $162 million to provide additional counselors and additional coaches and additional supports in the form of nurses and social workers. We could use that money very, very effectively here in Houston, where almost 80% of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch, yet we're writing a check back to the state of Texas because the school funding system, everybody, it's the worst kept secret, everybody knows it, it's the elephant in the room. isn't equitable and it doesn't work. So there is a role to play at the state level of redefining how we do school finance in the state of Texas. Despite those challenges, we're also, though, very proud of the work and it's he-man, journeyman work that our principals are doing with their communities, that despite those challenges, they're finding a way to bring those resources together. What we've said in our Achieve 180 plan is you're not alone. The districts come in with you now. So we're going to be helping with those kinds of resources as well. Yes, ma'am. Well, not necessarily in that way, but I will tell you where we are very targeted in our resources. So part of our Achieve 180 framework, really one of the pillars is excellent leadership. You can see excellent leadership standing with me. The other is teaching excellence. So do we have teachers that are experienced but also have a demonstrated track record of moving student achievement? We've been able to invite teachers to come. This is a call to action, and we've had teachers take us up on that and say, we're going to come to these Achieve 180 schools, not because they're bad, but because this is a challenge that I want to take on. And the board has approved stipends so that we can stipend teachers, because it's going to be a heavy lift and more work, and we can't possibly compensate everybody for the hours they put in, but it's a demonstrated value of the work that they're doing. That's happening. But I will tell you, in our Achieve 180 schools, in particular, the 10 schools that this year must improve, we are tracking almost hourly the vacancies in those schools to ensure that on day one we open school 100% staff. And I will tell you that in some cases, you get these last minute resignations. So there is one particular school that was 100% staffed. I'm not going to mention the school. 100% staffed. Something happened. They've lost 3 staff members. Not because they don't want to be at the school, but things have happened. So in that particular case, we're looking to staff those schools, of course, because we have people in the pipeline. But we are already preparing at a central office for our teachers on special assignment. Teachers that are teaching other teachers. We've identified who teachers are that have that credential, and we will put them into the classroom, because that's where we need our expertise, in the classroom day one. Not just a substitute teacher, but a teacher that can start the year. That's the kind of dedication that we're demonstrating to supporting our schools from day one. Yes, ma'am. So principals, so the principals that are in place are the principals we believe in. So they're already there. There was some movement over the summer and over the last semester of principals. And, you know, the thing about being a principal, and I've been a principal in 2 schools in 2 different states, so I get the work of the principal. It is not just the principal that has to do this alone. And circumstances are circumstances. So, you know, when I was working on a doctorate, I knew I had less time. We have some situations where people just don't have the time, or circumstances dictate that's not the good fit for them. We've been able to have them move to another area where it is a good fit, but we've been very dogged about making sure that the fit of the leadership for that community and that school is the right fit. So, for example, it's very important, make no bones about it, that if you have a school where an overwhelming majority of your community speaks Spanish, it just makes sense that the leader should probably speak Spanish, especially if you're trying to bring parents in and you're trying to get them involved. Now, is it critically important? Not necessarily, but it's probably a good practice. So we've been very thoughtful of things like that. We've been very thoughtful that our principals have the support they need to be able to do the job we're asking them to do, but being very conscious that, well, they have some autonomy to make decisions at school sites. There are certain things that we as a central office need to be able to support principals in doing. And I'll give you a perfect example. The question was asked about a school that is an improvement required status and the enrollment may dip. Well, that's an actual phenomenon. So because enrollment and money and funding is tied to students, as the enrollment dips, the funding dips, yet your challenges remain and in some cases grow even greater. So what the district has done as part of our Achieve 180 plan is to invest in essential positions. And it's very clearly the fact that an essential position means that instead of a school having to rub two pennies together and decide, do I keep an extra teacher to reduce class size, or do I invest in establishing a nursing position? And in some cases in the past, they've had to say, there will be no nurse. We'll try to make it work. What we've said is every one of these schools will have a nurse or a social worker. They will have a librarian or a literacy specialist that's working in their library. We're going to fund their libraries. We're going to make sure that they have counselors. And we're also going to make sure that they have some semblance of coaching so that teachers get coached by master teachers, as well as the feedback that they're getting from their administrators. Now, that may seem like you're just adding positions or you're just throwing money at the issue. It's not that at all. In these school communities, they are counting every penny to keep the lights on and the roof over their head. So if we as a central office are providing those essential positions, that frees up their resources for other targeted intervention, enrichment activities, after school activities, fine arts activities. So what we're trying to do is not have a drill and kill model, but have an enriched model where we're supporting the learning senses of all of our students. Laura?
Superintendent, I was wondering, how would you sum up your takeaway from these results? You know, some schools exiting improvement required, some schools still on the list, some new schools, a few new on the list. And when you look at the overall numbers and where you need to go, and what's your overall takeaway?
Yeah, so I'm always a half full kind of guy. So I'm incredibly excited. I'm incredibly buoyed by the results that we have when you have 90% of your campuses. And remember, this is the largest school district in the state of Texas, the 7th largest in the United States. We're not talking about a handful of schools. We're talking about almost 300 schools. And to have 90% of them meet the standards on an increasing scale of rigor to meet the standard, that's something for Houstonians to be very proud of. However, because we have schools that fall in and out of improvement required status, that portends to more of a systemic issue. So systemically, how are we setting up our schools to be successful? I would very respectfully and humbly say that the framework of Achieve 180 is a good research-driven, research-based model of the components of successful schools. So as we look at all of our schools and their capacity in each one of those buckets, one of the pillars of work, I think we're going to move towards more of a systemic approach of continually empowering and building capacity for school or academic achievement in our district. So I think the future looks very good. The future has some real trouble spots in front of it, not the least of which, and I know we've talked a lot about this, but the least of which is the 10 schools that this year must academically accelerate to move out of the improvement required status. That is not lost on us. It's what we wake up thinking about. It's what we go to bed thinking about, if we actually sleep. Because we're very, very committed and concerned that those schools will have a shot at getting out. But I don't want to have lost with all of this conversation about improving schools that are on the IR list. I don't want it to be lost that 160 of our 259 of our campuses were eligible for distinctions this year. The top quartile in the state of Texas of like schools. 160 received at least one of those designations, and 33 received every conceivable designation that they were eligible for. That is something to be very proud of. So we have a well-functioning district academically, but we have some work to do to make sure that every single school is performing academically at the level that we not only want, but we expect as Houstonians here in HISD. Pues la visión para este distrito escolar, y lo dice bien, es el más grande en el estado de Texas, es que va a ser el número uno acerca de acontecimientos académicos de cualquier distrito en el estado de Texas. Yo tengo esa idea, esa visión, porque tenemos un equipo de directores, como los puedes ver hoy aquí. Tenemos una mesa directiva que está enfocado en mejorar los avances académicos y tenemos un distrito que está disponible a invertir los recursos, aunque sean mínimos, porque vivimos sobre lo que nos entregan, pero estamos dedicados a dedicar esos recursos a las escuelas que lo necesitan más.
Representa un reto la comunidad tan creciente de inmigrantes hispanos, de niños descendientes de inmigrantes hispanos y de otras comunidades también que siguen pues creciendo en el distrito.
Pues es una pregunta muy importante, primeramente porque yo creo que es importante que toda la población hispanoparlante reconozca que nuestras escuelas son sitios que son para ellos sitios seguros, que pueden venir a nuestras escuelas, pueden sentirse nuestros padres de familias, que manden a sus hijos a nuestras escuelas y los vamos a cuidar y los vamos a tener bien cuidados. Y también les vamos a enseñar uno tras que otra cosa. Sin embargo, todo lo que se habla acerca de la inmigración en nuestras escuelas, no importa dónde nació un estudiante, solamente lo que importa es que llegue listo para estudiar. Número uno. Pero número dos, es importantísimo en cuanto a nuestra población va creciendo, hispanoparlante, va creciendo, que reconozcan que estas escuelas y nuestro distrito no nos pertenece a nosotros, sino que somos nosotros representantes para la comunidad. Entonces nos urge y es importantísimo, especialmente de nuestra población hispanoparlante, que se involucren en lo que está pasando en la escuela, que tengan una relación con el director, con las maestros en las escuelas, que sepan qué es lo que se está llevando a cabo dentro de esos edificios y que también sepan que no se sienten atrás, que se sienten en enfrente y que tengan una voz alta acerca de lo que está pasando en las escuelas. Es lo que queremos promover en este distrito escolar. Thank you all so much for your questions and for being here today. Thank you.